Cities by Cold Ingardez. Chapter 1. The Dream Palace of the Highborn. West of Canterlot, beyond the galloping mountains, beyond vast rolling plains filled with waving grass, beyond a desert painted with the pastel colors of a faded rainbow, beyond the last town, and the last road, and the last tree, the world comes to an end. It ends on a high cliff overlooking the largest body of water known to any mortal race. This great ocean extends beyond the horizon, limitless and incomprehensible. The few Pegasi who fly this far from the comfort of civilization say the air above it tastes alien, and the clouds that drift in from its shore mock their attempts to shape. It is a wild ocean, and cruel. The unbroken cliffs extend to the left and right as far as the eye can see, and Pegasus' eyes can see quite far. The edge of the cliff is a knife that cuts the world in two. There is only one imperfection along its entire 1,000-mile run. The tower is visible from dozens of miles away. The spire at its top appears first as travelers approach. The curve of the planet conceals the rest. By the time travelers reach its base, the tower seems to reach the heavens. The flat earth that extends to the east and the flat ocean to the west only emphasize its unnatural height. Clouds break against its side and drift past like bits of cotton caught on a bramble in the woods. The tower's walls are not perfectly regular. 3 grooves, each the size of a city block, spiral up its length, lending the entire affair an organic feel that is utterly defeated by the tower's monstrous size. At its circular base, the tower is hundreds of yards across. Celestia's castle atop Canterlot Mountain could easily fit within its circumference. A slender but noticeable taper begins at about the height of the lowest clouds and ends miles above in a tip that was once as sharp as a needle before centuries of wind and neglect wore it down to a blunt and misshapen lump the size of a pony's hoof. A closer inspection of the walls reveals hairline gaps between massive blocks of granite. They are polished smooth, and even the long years alone with the wind and ocean have done little to weather them. Salt stains the side of the tower facing the ocean, a splotchy white that vaguely resembles the cloudy sky above. The architects of the tower considered it their race's greatest work, though not a single unicorn ever lifted a hoof in its construction. It was the seat of their power, the heart of an empire that extended no more than 12 miles in any direction, but held more wealth than the entire rest of the world combined. For 12 centuries the White Queen ruled from the tower's silver throne, and they believed in their hubris that the dream would last forever. It did not. No unicorns remain in the hot spire. The only souls here are ghosts, but there are many of those. The base of the tower is interrupted by 3 openings. They are not doors or gates, for they were never meant to close. The hot spire was not intended as a defensive structure. The first level of the tower is a vast open field. It held gardens once, filled with plants and animals from every biome in the world. Warding spells contained small patches of desert, swamp, and tundra, all within 12 feet of each other. All were beautiful, yes, but beauty was never their point. "This is power," the gardens said. "We can bend nature to our will." Little grows here now but weeds. It is dark on this level, and only plants adapted to the twilight places of the world thrive in the ruins. What little light remains leaks in from the openings and from faint flickering stars high above. The stars once shone like miniature suns. Although they appear like pinpoints from the ground, each is a crystal globe 3 feet across. When they were new, they were so bright that any organic object that came within 10 feet would burst into flames. One of these globes, by itself, could light an entire town at night. Most of the globes are dead now. The few that retain a bit of their ancient magic appear ready to fail at any time. It is an illusion. They will all live longer than the pony watching them far below. Along the distant walls, wide ramps slowly wind their way up the tower to the levels above. Most of the Heart Spire is filled with residences. The smallest homes are near the bottom, though most of them would seem lavish by the standards of modern ponies. Higher up, after the spiraling ramps have circled the tower several times, the homes are as large as palaces, and still they grow larger until each level of the tower can only hold 1 or 2. But these homes are like castles, complete with their own walls and towers, built in mockery of the ponies living far from the Heart Spire's walls. "You build walls out of fear," the castle said. "We build them for joy." Almost no light naturally reaches these levels. Unlike the open fields below, there are no sun globes to push back the darkness. Each home was expected to provide its own light, and, in any case, the unicorns living within them filled the tower with illusions of star-filled skies, perpetual sunsets, or whatever scene they desired. The tower had no real windows, which could have spoiled the featureless perfection of the walls. The highest residence is virtually a city unto itself. The tower is narrower by this point, but it is still wide enough that the far side is lost in darkness. Hundreds of small outbuildings surround a central castle, and the rotted remnants of flags hang limp from its pinnacles in the still air of the tower. Still, the ramps lead higher. The Heart Spire is not even half done. The next level is as open as the first. The ramps end on a smooth plain of stone that stretches the entire width of the tower. Hundreds of yards above, a vaulted ceiling carved with images of stars and galaxies stares down at the emptiness. In the center of this empty field rises a pedestal dozens of feet high. Stairs, inlaid with every imaginable precious stone and metal, lead up its side to a top just a few feet across. There was a throne here once. It was crafted from silver and platinum, with a red velvet cushion said to be softer than the very clouds. During the Heart Spire's long reign, 97 mayors, styling themselves the White Queen, sat here and ruled the only part of the world that mattered. At the top of the pedestal there is a twisted mass of ruined metal. Fragments weighing hundreds of pounds lie scattered across the stone floor for dozens of yards. The gray stone all around is riven with cracks and fissures. In the center, where the throne once rested, a silver scimitar has broken the stones and stands there embedded. A thin layer of frost has accumulated along the blade, despite the constant stale warmth of the Heart Spire. Otherwise it is perfect, undulled, and unmarred by time. History records precisely one visit by Luna and Celestia to the Heart Spire. To reach the higher levels of the tower, one must take a bit of a detour. There are no ramps leading up from the throne room. Only unicorns capable of teleporting can go any higher. The walls are noticeably closer now, dozens instead of hundreds of yards apart. Unicorns who teleported directly to this level from the ground felt their ears pop, and sometimes they grew breathless and faint if they moved too quickly. It was a small price to pay for being closer to the stars. The level has the feel of a ritual space. Marble basins filled with dust line the walls, and the stones are filled with elaborate carvings. Legions of ponies march in relief across the walls. Earth ponies haul stone blocks across a featureless field broken only by the image of a low, incomplete tower. Unicorns stand among them, passing out food and drink, and using their magic to aid the earth ponies in placing the blocks. The images are different on the next level. The earth ponies are smaller, their features crude and animalistic. The sculptor has not bothered to give them cutie marks. The unicorns no longer stand among them. They oversee them from raised platforms. Their features are refined and detailed, with complex armor and cutie marks. The sculptor has carved individual strands of hair in their manes. The tower in the distance is higher. There are no earth ponies on the next level. Heroic unicorns march across the walls, far larger than the real ponies who once stood here. Beneath their hooves, fading away into the background, the sculptor has etched what may be a sea of backs and manes and tails, toiling in obscurity. They bear up their high-born lords. In the distance the heart spire stands tall and complete. The sculptor has carved rays like the sun shining from its peak. Part of the wall is damaged. Through a small gap barely larger than a pony's head, the world stretches away to the distant curved horizon. Clouds drift below the impromptu window. For the first time, a scent other than dirt and stone fills the air. It drifts in from the opening. It is ash. The highest level is largely missing. Only a few square yards of the floor remain. Some tremendous, violent force has opened the room to the sky, and half the walls are simply gone. The ceiling and spire above, hundreds of tons of granite, sway in time with the wind. Only the tower's residual magic keeps the entire affair from collapsing. A stone altar slumps in the center of the room. It has melted like a candle left too near a fire, and rivulets of solid rock flow across the floor. Its black, charred surface is speckled with bright points, where crystals formed when minerals in the stone began to fuse. The surviving walls are blackened, but they still tell a story. Rows of unicorns bear earth ponies in the air above them, carrying them up spiraling ramps, higher and higher, past gardens and homes, and a throne and basins flowing with water. Higher and higher the unicorns bear their captives until they reach a room with a stone altar. The rest of the story is lost, along with the walls in which it was carved. Only the heart spire's ghosts know the rest, along with Celestia and Luna, who visited the heart spire but once. Lost Cities by Cold Ingardez. Chapter 2. The Fortress City of the Clouds. North of Canterlot, in the far marches of the equestrian lands near the border with the Griffin tribes, there is a mountain that flies. It is not shaped like the mountains adhering to the rocky earth far below. It is not shaped like the easy geometric summits drawn in full storybooks. It does not share their snow-capped peaks or bedrock roots. There are no veins of ore running through it like blood. It cannot be climbed. But it is a mountain, nevertheless. From below, Derecho appears as a massive stone hanging in the sky. It is vaguely diamond-shaped, with two tapered poles pointing toward the heaven and the earth. Here and there, visible as it slowly rotates, sharp angles and straight lines still hold their shape. But time and weather and the relentless hail of solar radiation have eroded much of the rest, transforming it into a landscape of runnels and abstract sculpture. A wall 1,000 feet high girdles the mountain like a belt around its middle. This wall has survived somewhat better than the rest of the structure, for the Pegasi who created it used the densest, hardest clouds their magic could manufacture in its construction. Still, even these clouds were not meant to withstand the centuries, and they have begun to crumble, leaving the 1,000-foot-high wall significantly shorter in spots. The upper edge of the wall has suffered more than the lower, which remains almost perfect for its miles-long run. Tiny spikes dot the wall at regular intervals. Pegasi who dare to fly closer may see these specks resolve into towers, placed there for the city's defenders to rest and, if necessary, take shelter from the harsh weather of the north. Most have crumbled. A few seem untouched. Again, the towers hanging from the bottom of the wall have fared better than those above. By itself, this wall would be counted among the largest cloud structures ever created. When it was still intact, its cubic volume was greater than the entire city of Cloudsdale. Seen against the entirety of Derecho, of the mountain it rings, the wall is little more than a thin band, a white ribbon, once satin, now laced with holes and imperfections. It is fair to assume that the first Pegasi who dreamed of Derecho could not imagine the enormity their creation would become. Few records remain from Equestria prior to the unification, and besides, Pegasi were never renowned for their bookkeeping. Deep inside Derecho, in the heart of the mountain, there remains a small compound made of thick cloud walls, with thin, high windows, just wide enough for an arrow to pass through on its way out. Once these windows stared out at high, airless reaches facing the Griffin tribes. From these windows Pegasi could see the sky and the ground and everything in between. It is small, barely 20 paces across, with only 3 rooms. From this tiny seed the mountain was born. Unlike most cloud cities, Derecho is not white. The Pegasi who built it over the course of centuries packed its structure hard with water, turning it to the color of a thunderstorm. Over time, the lighter clouds, the streets and houses and parks, dissolved and blew away, leaving only the city's bones behind. Foundation clouds a mile deep still hold their form remarkably well, and give Derecho its characteristic diamond shape, like a pair of ziggurats joined at their base. Derecho is so large that its 2 poles experience different weather. Wet air, driven by the wind into the upper half of the city, is forced further upward, causing it to cool. This forms clouds, which in turn form rain, that runs down the city slopes in a constant stream that becomes a waterfall when it reaches the city wall. Mist perpetually shrouds the top of the city, turning Derecho's peak into a nebulous, dark shape, more imagined than seen. The underside of the city, by contrast, is dry. The mountain above intercepts the rain like the world's most inefficient umbrella. The cloud walls and bricks have dried and turned brittle over the centuries, and they tear like paper. When it was still inhabited, Derecho held station at the border between Equestria and the Griffin lands to the north. It did not drift with the wind as it does today. It and its shadow were ever present. To the earth ponies living below, Derecho was a mixed blessing. It kept away the griffins, as was its intention, but earth ponies as a rule prefer their mountains to stay on the ground. The earth ponies did not talk much with the Pegasi back then, except to trade food for favorable weather. They did not know the Pegasi called their fortress city Derecho. They did not know Pegasi named their great cities after storms. Instead, they gave it their own name, one spoken with both derision and awe, in honor of the weight of the shadow on their backs. They called the city Eclipse. The Pegasi did not think much of the earth ponies below them. Most didn't realize they were there at all. Derecho's construction took centuries. Swaths of Equestria's northern territories turned to desert after the Pegasi stole their clouds as building blocks. Some of those deserts are still there today. At the height of its power, nearly half the souls of the Pegasus race resided in Derecho. The Thunder Queen ruled from its highest spire. Cloud forming became a true art in Derecho's halls, and today the Derecho style of sculpture remains the most widely imitated throughout the world. The largest library ever built by the Pegasi, containing over 1,000 volumes, is said to have existed here. As noted earlier, the Pegasi were not known as bookkeepers. History records 2 instances of Celestia visiting Derecho. The first, in the decades leading up to the unification, was a diplomatic visit by her and Luna with the nationally equally ranked Pegasus monarch at the time, Hurricane 3. Her daughter, Hurricane 4, was the first of their line to rule the Pegasi from the new unified capital, Everfree. The second visit was centuries later, shortly after Nightmare Moon's banishment, by which time Derecho was already derelict and abandoned. No accounts exist of this visit, except for a single line in the Canterlot Sun Court's daily proceedings, noting that the princess had departed for a short trip and returned by sundown of the same day. Modern sky maps do not show Derecho as a fixed point. Instead, there is a line showing its gradual course across the northern territories, with dots occasionally marking a date when the city was spotted at its new location. After the most recent date, the solid line becomes a dashed line, the product of the best guesses of Pegasi forecasters for its wanderings. No pony calls Derecho home today. Pegasi sometimes visit to explore its depths or relive the glory days of their race. Most leave soon, realizing how little comfort glory is. And Derecho, the mountain that flies, the fortress city of the clouds, continues on its silent way, a mass of bones and ghosts floating ever into the future. Lost Cities by Cold Ingardez. Chapter 3. The Garden Out of Time. There is a river in a valley. It flows slowly at the pinnacle of summer after weeks of heat and evening storms that filled the valley with thunder, but not much rain. Insects dart across its still surface, leaving behind trails of expanding circles, like a stone skipping endlessly upon the water. They fill the air with their buzz, a low, ceaseless drone that combines with the heat to lull ponies into peaceful naps along the shore. There are no ponies here today. They rarely venture this far south from the settled lands around Canterlot. 20 centuries have passed since the age of migration ended, and only the most adventurous of ponies, those dedicated wanderers and wayward souls, bother to cross the wild badlands in search of their ancient ancestral homes. The few who do are Pegasi, of course, and they have little appreciation for the valley and its treasures. And so, like every other day, the river does its river thing, and the insects do theirs, and the wind teases them both, and the trees along the banks rise in stately majesty as far as the eye can see, until the sweeping wings of mountains lift from the forest floor a dozen miles away to take a jagged bite from the sky. The forest is thick and choking with life. Sycamores and willows, those lovers of water, line the river banks. Further in, swamp oaks compete for space with ashes and the occasional maple. Their trunks are pillars, and they turn the dark world beneath the canopy into a cathedral, extending without depth into the distant shadows. The ground, where it can be seen beneath growths of wild roses, honeysuckle, and countless wild flowers, is soft with the accumulation of last season's leaves. They are brown and crunch beneath the hooves. Between 2 nearby trees a spider has crafted its web. The gossamer spiral is anchored at 3 points, one on each tree, and one on a curious stone tangled in their entwining roots. The stone is the size of an apple. It is shaped like a foal. A few hundred yards away there is a small ravine carved out by a thin stream that diverted from its path centuries ago when an elm collapsed in a storm. The tree has long since rotted away, but the stream never returned to its original flow. A deep pool fills the basin where the elm's roots once dug. A stone pillar juts from the surface of the pool. It is smooth and circular in cross-section, and its skin has been decorated with carvings of climbing vines. Real leaves now cover much of these designs, as though the forest had used them for a template in its own growth. The top of the pillar is broken. Whatever it once supported is lost, as is much of the rest of Lith, the largest city ever to exist in Equestria. The forest is not natural. It pretends it is, and in another 1,000 years the last traces of earth pony presence may finally wear away, leaving nature to run its course, or maybe not. The earth pony's presence, like everything about them, is durable. It does not blow away in the wind, or burn itself out like a candle. It endures. It is like stone. So for today at least, the forest still bends to the will of its long-dead masters. The signs are small, but visible to those who know where to look. Amidst the random growth, a line of trees grows in a perfect row for 100 yards. Every tree is the same, an Osage orange, grown to monstrous proportions with the passage of centuries. Their trunks are riddled with thorns as long as a unicorn's horn, and the branches above them are gravid with countless fruits. Plants with no business in a forest fill the space around the trees. Wild maize and sunflowers crowd together in bright patches beneath holes in the canopy. Blueberries have taken over a marshy bit of land near a slow stream. They fill the air with their sweet scent. Once the Osage oranges were simple hedge trees, marking the boundary of a small farm on the city's outskirts. They were smaller then, little more than shrubs. Time, and the last command they received from their masters, grow, have turned them into giants, all except the last tree at the end of the row. It is smaller than the others, as though it had not changed since it was a shrub. Its leaves do not blow in the wind, its branches do not sway. They are all made of stone. Further up the valley the first ruins begin to appear. They are overgrown, and only their bones peek out from the roots of trees growing atop them. Here a stone cornice carved with leaf-like frieze. There a set of marble stairs lead down into packed earth. Fragments of broken stone litter the forest like fallen leaves. The remains of a cobblestone road sometimes appear, where rain has washed away dirt and detritus. The stones are fractured and discolored, and they no longer provide an easy path between the buildings. Better to walk alongside the road and use it as a guide than to trust your ankles to its treacherous path. A row of tall, misshapen junipers marches alongside the stones, and once, before the forest grew above them, they may have provided the path with shade. One of the ruins is larger than the rest. It slumps in a heap of broken rock, and though it has collapsed upon itself, it is still as tall as some of the trees. The road leads up to the ruins and vanishes into them. A pair of statues flank the end of the road at the foot of the ruins. 2 earth ponies, both stallions, and wearing ornate metal armor that would have weighed hundreds of pounds were it real. They do not appear to even notice the weight. Whatever sculptor carved the statues was obsessed with realism. Every buckle in their armor, every lock of their mane, every hidden muscle beneath their stone skin, every eyelash, they have all been rendered perfectly. They look alive for all that they are stone. The centuries of wind and rain have done nothing to weather away the fanatic detail in which they were rendered. Beyond the collapsed ruin, another fated road slides through the forest as straight as an arrow. It ignores the trees, whose roots have torn it apart, leaving stones scattered among the fallen leaves. Far behind, the river can no longer be heard over the rustle of the trees in the wind. Lith was the first city the ponies founded after their retreat from the north. It once held unicorns and pegasi as well as earth ponies. In the early golden days, before the old hatreds re-emerged, the pegasi were the first to leave. The skies called to them as they had in the old days, and within a few generations not a single Pegasus remained in the Garden City. For centuries they made their homes in the clouds above Lith, and in a sense remained neighbors with their earth pony and unicorn cousins. But without a solid anchor they eventually drifted, as Pegasi are wont to do, and in time they left to build new cities in the clouds. When the unicorns left, they took nearly half the earth ponies of Lith with them. They promised a new homeland, built with magic and wonder, far to the west. The earth ponies who remained often wondered, in their final years, if they had erred in keeping to their roots. Centuries later, when tales of the Hot Spire trickled back, as like an ashen river through a cinder door, they counted their blessings instead. The ruins are close together further into the forest, and not as ruined either. The roofs have collapsed from most, but their walls still stand, doors and windows looking both in and out at nature's slow triumph. There is nothing that resembles the remains of a farm here. Marble slabs, some overturned, some still level, form wide avenues between the ruins. What might have once been a fountain stands in the center of a wide open area. Its basin is filled with dirt and life now. A lone pony sits near the fountain, staring at its climbing vines as if in contemplation. Her stone mane is frozen like a flag in the wind. Her abdomen is swollen, and an observer might be forgiven for assuming she was just starting to show the early stages of a first pregnancy. She is either several months from becoming a mother, or 1,000 years overdue, depending on your perspective. Near the center of the city, the buildings are still complete. A few are seemingly pristine, as though they had not sat empty and abandoned for a dozen centuries or more. The trees and vines that grow among them do so respectfully, providing the walls with shelter and shade, rather than tearing them apart. The largest of the vines, the eldest, are gray and hard. They already sink into the fossil timelessness that engulfs the city. Elaborate friezes decorate the high cornices. Earth ponies, carved marching in single file along the relief, carry with them the bounty of the fields. They carry their harvest along wide city streets, towards what can only be a palace. Low and humble, it may be compared with Martin Canterlot. In the highest room of the palace, a pair of tall unicorns overlook the scene. Faint shapes that may have been wings are carved alongside them. The eldest records of Celestia and Luna's lives date from Lith's golden era. They were not gods then, or even rulers. For generations they were simply the only non-Earth ponies to live in the city, and by dint of that fact alone they were the subject of curiosity and admiration. Even with the passage of centuries, they never presumed to challenge the authority of the Stone Queens over their people. If there was a specific event that led the sisters to depart Lith, it has been lost to time. What is known is that the greater part of the city, over 1,000,000 souls, simply left one day, migrating north across the Badlands toward the fabled Everfree Plains. In the highest of the ruins, situated atop a hill in the center of the city, a stone throne occupies the top tier of a pedestal. The court it presides over is filled with guards, all frozen at attention. Some have closed their eyes, others remain open, yet still unseeing. Around the throne is gathered a family. The eldest, the matriarch, sits at its foot. A rough rock crown, easily weighing hundreds of pounds, is centered upon her forehead. Pressed up against her, all embracing, are a stallion and 3 foals. None have moved in 1,000 years. Only a few ponies remained in Lith after Celestia and Luna departed. They were not enough to fill such a huge city, and over the decades their numbers slowly dwindled. With each year, more and more accepted their fate. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and stone to stone. Lost Cities by Cold Ingardez. Chapter 4. The Last City of Ruins. The everfree forest is close to Ponyville, so close that even after stepping hoof into its verdant shadows, a pony can still hear the creak of windmills, the bang of doors, the shouts of foes. It is wild, untamed, and dangerous. It is filled with monsters. Few ponies venture into its depths. Fewer return. Even at its margins, where moss-laden oaks brood over the grass and flowers of the meadow, the forest exudes a sense of otherness. The line of trees demarks not just the boundary of the forest, but an end to the order ponies have struggled for centuries to impose upon the land. The plants within grow wild and free. The animals and monsters, two categories that blur, the deeper one intrudes into the ever-free, obey only nature's laws. The clouds above are shapeless and huge, 100 or 1,000 times the size of normal clouds. All this just past the first line of trees at the edge of the meadow outside Ponyville. There are paths through the everfree, though who created them is something of a mystery. They are far too large to be game trails, and they seem to require no maintenance. No grasses intrude upon them, no fallen trees lie across them. Ponies who stay upon the paths are generally safe from whatever lurks in the mists around them. Sometimes the paths change. No pony has ever seen it happen, but every few years a path will simply vanish, gone, a memory. Centuries-old trees stand in their place. Once, decades after the banishment, a unicorn scholar spent a full year studying the paths. She placed scrying spells, wards, and charm circles on every path she could find, and she lived in a small hut in a large grove, and did her best to hide from the slouching beasts that knocked on her walls at night. Against all expectation, she lived long enough to record several twists in the paths, and the conclusions she shared after escaping from the forest convinced her fellow scholars to find other subjects for their study. The paths had not shifted. They never existed at all. Poison Joke is the best-known example of Everfree's diverse, enchanting, exotic, and often downright lethal assortment of plants. It is not, despite the name, related to poison ivy or poison oak. It is more closely related to the tropical hibiscus, though strongly, and apparently magically, modified to survive in the dim gloom that fills the forest. On clear autumn nights, when the moon is full, the blossoms take on a faint silver glow that persists even when the flowers are moved into shadows or indoors. No pony has ever died from Poison Joke intoxication. Several ponies have died from the indirect effects of intoxication. Pegasi, whose wings fail mid-flight, or ponies unable to escape from the everfree's many predators because the bones in their legs have suddenly turned soft as moss. A full catalogue of everfree's flora has never been completed. Some of the more unusual known plants include spider brambles, whose thousands of blossoms are living, fully functioning spiders, capable of spinning webs and capturing insects. They are generally shy and do not bite ponies, except in self-defense. They are not edible and make poor gifts, according to florists. In the swampy areas of the forest, what appear to be blueberries grow in thick clusters near fallen logs. Animal corpses, or simply bones, are often found around them, sometimes with the remains of berries still in their mouths. Roots have grown all through them, piercing them, drinking them. They are not blueberries. None of these plants are considered particularly dangerous by scholars of the everfree. Those lie further in. A variety of predators call the everfree home. Deep gouges scour the trunks of most of the larger trees in the forest. The wounds lie in rows, usually of 3 or 4, and cut deep enough into the bark to draw out weeping flows of sap. They form shining amber runnels that buzz with flies and ants, drawn by their sweet scent and taste. The slashes are one-way manticores mark their territory. The acrid stench of their urine is another, used by males to warn each other away from potential conflicts. Female manticores are more sociable, and their territories often overlap, except when game becomes scarce. Once a year, a few weeks before the spring equinox, manticores will swarm. The territorial animosity they display the rest of the year fades, and for a single night they gather by the thousands, crowding the air with their flight and bending the trees with their weight. They appear like a million monstrous bats wheeling among the stars in some ancient dance that defies meaning or reason. They gather not to mate or to fight, or for any purpose, it seems. By the time the sun rises, they are gone. Not far from one of the paths, a pair of trees have fallen together into a spindly corpse, their branches grasping at the canopy above as though to climb back up, or perhaps pull their still-standing neighbors down. The space between their trunks is crowded with twigs and leaves and vines, far more than could have belonged to those 2 trees alone. The mound of vegetation swells out, a cancerous mass, pregnant with secrets. When building their dens, timber wolves often seek such fallen trees. It is not clear why they do so, certainly not protection, as timber wolves have no natural predators aside from fire. They pile their dens high with any green thing they can find, and spend the night-time hours inside. It is hard for the few ponies who ventured this deep into the Everfree, who see timber wolf dens and manticore swarms, to remember that this was once the heart of a kingdom, that the very steps they now walk were trod by the sisters at the height of their power, when all the world bowed to the celestial thrones. It was the golden age of ponies, and Everfree City was their jewel. But gold is also the color of autumn and sunsets. It is the color of ending. At its widest point, the Everfree Forest is nearly 50 kilometers across. It is the largest freestanding forest in Equestria, and every year it grows. The new growth is generally harmless, more like a normal woods than the unnatural darkness that inhabits the Everfree's heart. Where it grows near towns, such as Ponyville, it is chopped back with little difficulty. The forest and the ponies around it have, after nearly 1,000 years, reached homeostasis. They live as wary neighbors, and sleep with daggers beneath their pillows. They have made peace with the forest, like villagers living beneath a volcano, confident that it will erupt some other day. There is a river that runs the length of the forest. Ruins dot its banks, isolated at first, then growing in size the nearer one travels to the source. Marble and granite columns lie half sunk in the boggy woods, overrun with vines until they appear like trees themselves. They are picturesque and unthreatening, and aside from the occasional serpent, the river is a relatively safe path into the forest depths. Were it not for a series of waterfalls and rapids, one could venture almost to the old palace itself on a boat. The city's bones rest closer to the surface here, in the heart of the forest. Wide stone walkways, now crumbling, lead straight up to the river's edge. Broken walls, their empty windows like the eyes of a skull, stand alone and forlorn amidst the ruins. It was a beautiful city once, a dream of marble and towers and gods. Vast squares filled with fountains and sculptures that existed for no reason but the joy they brought to ponies who passed them by. The largest fountain was more than 50 feet high, layered like a wedding cake, and decorated with free-standing statues of pegasi, unicorns, and earth ponies, all dancing in unison. High above, atop the fountain's highest level, a pair of winged unicorns gyred around a common center, each touching a wingtip to the other. Little remains of the fountain today. The noble statues are heaps of rubble. Only a few pieces, a leg, a head, a wing, are even vaguely recognizable. The flat flagstones all around are buckled and torn. More trees stand here than statues now. Up ahead, barely visible through the perpetual mists, a few high towers still live. They are broken, toothless, and hollow, but they have not fallen yet. Some other fate awaits them. The ruins open onto a broad plaza, seemingly untouched by time or the forest all around. Dark stones, cut into pristine squares, create a vast plain upon which not even grass or mold has dared to grow. By day the obsidian shines like black glass in the sun. At night the moonlight penetrates deep into the rock, far deeper than the stones are thick, and transforms the dim emptiness beneath the pony's hooves into a gaping space filled with stars and nebula and galaxies. A simple metal sculpture stands in the center of the square. A silver crescent rises from a stone pedestal carved with 1,000 pinpoint stars. It has not dulled or tarnished with time, and glimmers as bright as the day it was forged. On humid days, which are common here in the forest, a layer of frost sometimes forms along the metal, regardless of how warm the sun shines. The Plaza of the Moon was one of the wonders of the ancient world, though few ponies at the time would have said so. They saw it only during the day, when it was plain and simple, and featurelessly black. They rarely visited at night, when its full majesty was on display. Less than a mile away from the Plaza of the Moon, another vast square still stands within the jungle's growth. Blocks of brilliant marble, enough marble to build a mountain, are laid out side by side like soldiers standing in a row. The level stones once shone bright as the noon sky. Once a great sundial held court in the Plaza of the Sun, crafted from gold and platinum. Its style stood higher than 10 ponies, and the sweep of its dial was nearly as large as Luna's entire court. The gold inlay was polished smooth by countless ponies who brushed their hooves against it, reverently whispering prayers to the god it honored. On any given day 500,000 souls crossed the plaza and admired, if only in passing, the unveiled beauty reflected on its face. The great sundial is shattered now. The fluted gold beam whose shadow marked the hours lies in fragments all around. Some great heat has rendered them to slag, and they slump on the broken marble like runnels of wax from a candle. The graceful dial has been uprooted and twisted into a mockery of the order it once spoke. The level stones are ruined now. Wrecks of marble, pieces weighing hundreds of tons each, are scattered like toys in every direction. The square is sunken and warped. Countless bones lie in its cracks and crevices, a once living mortar that binds the fragments together in death. The teeming millions are fled now. They have left the city to its shadows. The sisters are gone now. Only the forest remains. Far in the distance, just barely visible from the heart of the Everfree, proud Canterlot juts from the edge of a mountain. It is filled with flowing water, families, and life. It is a dream made real. The ponies who live there believe it will last forever.